report, Mr. Clark was referred to only once and was not subject to any allegations, let alone an adverse finding. Britain dealt with this differently from other countries. In France, the health minister and a former prime minister were charged with manslaughter for their role in allowing infected blood to be given to haemophiliacs. Lord Owen is suspicious that Whitehall got rid of documents that might have led to similar charges here.
Personally, I do think the fundamental question is, did the civil service collectively, if you like, at some stage in the middle 80s, take fright at what was happening legally in France with the case against the former health minister, who by then being Prime Minister, Fabius, and did they decide that they were going to effectively make sure that that couldn't happen in the UK? And there are a lot of pointers in this report which indicate that.
The haemophiliacs have received small ex gratia payments, but in Ireland, the government paid out 10 times as much.
First, we want to say to the government, you really ought to be a little more generous than you've been up to now. Many other countries which have had a similar disaster are paying much more money to those who were infected because they're in need. They have lost their jobs and things of that kind. And what we want to say is, without suggesting any specific amounts, we thought an indication would be what the government of Ireland is paying at the moment.
But for Hayden, compensation won't put everything right. The hepatitis C, which was injected into him in the infected factor VIII, has damaged his liver and led to cancer.
Now I've reached the stage where a liver tumour has appeared in my liver. It's at the stage of 3.5 centimetres. If it gets to 5 centimetres, I'll be taken off the transplant list. I cannot get any more prioritised than I am at the moment. And unfortunately, it's down to fate. If I get one, I'll be saved. If I don't, I will die.
Well, with us now, Judith Willits, one of the authors of Lord Archer's report, and Andrew March, a haemophiliac who contracted both HIV and hepatitis C through contaminated blood treatments. Andrew March, what are your feelings about this report?
Well, I welcome the report as a very important milestone, but there are some aspects of it that I would like to have seen go further than they have.
Specifically?
Blame, the distribution of blame, or, if that was counterproductive, perhaps we could just, suggest what areas could have been improved in more detail.
Judith Willits, did the Department of Health cooperate with you in this report?
They refused to give oral evidence. They cooperated in the production of certain documents.
Did they produce all the documents you wanted?
I don't know, because there was some, we believe there was some missing, so we don't know what we didn't see.
There were quite a lot missing, apparently, according to various people who knew,
yes.
Like Lord Owen, for example.
There were ministerial documents that went missing as well.
Did the Health Secretary, Kenneth Clarke, testify to you?
No, he didn't, no.
Would you have liked him to?
We did extend invitations to the department and to ex-members of the department to take part, but the line was always that they had never felt that it was appropriate to have a statutory inquiry, so they didn't feel it was appropriate to present evidence to our inquiry.
I don't want to suggest your effort was a waste of time, because clearly it wasn't, but it is not a comprehensive answer to what happened then, is it?
No, we've tried to examine the evidence that we were party to. It isn't a full picture. One of the problems that we encountered was the fact that the problem began such a long time ago. You're talking about, 30 years ago. And many of the people we'd have liked to speak to, and many of the recollections of those people, many of them are actually not even alive anymore.
Some of them are not alive, and plenty of them are alive. And plenty of documents have strangely disappeared.
Yes, we've said that we haven't got access to all the documents, but we were provided
You're told
with,
some of them don't exist, isn't that the case? Or can't be found?
Were lost, mislaid, accidentally destroyed.
Do you believe that explanation from the Department of Health?
No, I believe there's been a definite cover-up of the information. Various documents weren't released in the FOI that came directly from the department. Campaigners had to source these documents under their own initiative.
For compensation to be payable, Would you not have to demonstrate that there was some intent on the part of the department or ministers or something?
Well, intent's a very hard thing to prove, but I do believe there was wrongdoing. So we could.
What do you mean wrongdoing?
Wrongdoing, oh, goodness me, non-adherence to the Medicines Act is an example. With the under fours rule of not exposing them to contaminated commercial concentrates, that organisations didn't follow their own guidelines.
Do you conclude that there were commercial considerations which overrode considerations of patient care in this case?
I think the producers of the product in America certainly had commercial interests at the forefront. It was run as a profitable industry.
Well, of course, it was a company.
Yes.
But as far as the Department of Health was concerned, did you get a sense or a fear, on the basis of the incomplete evidence you were given, that the department here was more preoccupied with commercial considerations than it should have been, perhaps at the expense of patient care?
No, I think they were not preoccupied enough for the problems that we've heard about, for example, that of achieving self-sufficiency. Therein lies the problem. If we'd had more sense of urgency of actually achieving self-sufficiency, the requirement for buying in the product from America would have been considerably lessened. May I just come back to your
Please.
point on compensation?
Yeah.
I do think that there are plenty of precedents for compensation being paid out with any admission of liability whatsoever. Victims of crime are given compensation, and there's no notion there that the government is responsible for those crimes. And I think it's very important that we address the needs of the haemophilia patients and actually put something in place to address that now.
What do you want to see happen?
I would like to see the recommendations of the report implemented. I think it's very important that we have appropriate financial recompense for those affected. We've also made recommendations for a statutory committee to be set up.
Do the recommendations go far enough?
Some of them do, yes. The idea of compensation, would be very much welcome if it was on a level with the Republic of Ireland. But there are campaigners that are not happy with this. Some people are very distraught that they've been exposed to non-consensual research. That they're not going to be so happy with this, and perhaps they may feel as though they're being bought. We
actually found no evidence of that, of people being used as guinea pigs, as has been suggested. The evidence that we were presented with didn't bring that out at all.
What about the MRC minutes of 1983? There were people that had HIV-infected products specifically aimed at them because they didn't have HIV at that time, and the situation in the United Kingdom was lagging 3 years behind America.
Well, we don't have direct evidence of that. One thing that I do think we're very concerned about was the fact that people with a very mild form of haemophilia were prescribed a product with a known risk, and those should be the last people that's prescribed to, and we did have evidence of that through the inquiry.
Thank you both very much indeed.